Good evening, everyone. My name is Dunstan Nicol-Wilson. I work as a project manager, freelance writer for Sickle Cell Anemia News, and I'm also a sickle cell advocate that supports Give Blood, Spread Love projects. So I'm here today to talk about mental health. So just to throw out some facts that are kind of scary in a way, because we've got here 3 times as many men as women die by suicide. Men report lower levels of life satisfaction than women, according to the Government National Wellbeing Survey. Men are less likely to access psychological therapies than women. Only 36% of referrals to NHS talking therapies are for men. Men are far more likely than women to go missing, sleep rough, become dependent on alcohol, and use drugs frequently. So these stats are very bleak, so which is why we're having the conversation today around men's mental health. And hopefully, as Olivia said, please do join in whenever you feel like you would like to contribute to the conversation. I'm also joined today by Emmanuel, who I'm going to pass over to introduce himself.
Thanks, Dunstan. So, yeah, I'm Emmanuel Nola. I'm also a volunteer for the Sickle Cell Society, working as part of the Give Blood, Spread Love project, encouraging those of a Black heritage to donate blood to help meet that shortfall that we have with Black match blood. By week, I'm a regional business manager for a skincare company. In the evenings and on the weekends, I'm a husband and father. And this year I did a mental health course, which is mainly around being able to listen and those who need an ear about things that they're going through. So that's myself in short.
Great, thanks, Manuel. So let's get the conversation going. So we have here that depression and anxiety in men, like it affects everyone, depression and anxiety. But in terms of some of the causes, I guess I could speak from like my own personal experience. So I mentioned at the start that I am a sickle cell advocate. It might not be obvious, but I also have sickle cell anemia, which is why I tend to speak about my experiences. And for me, sickle cell has definitely contributed to having depressive episodes or feeling anxious, because it's a chronic condition. For those who don't know, it's an inherited blood disorder that affects all of my red blood cells. They turn into these sickle shaped whenever I experience one of my triggers, which can be stress or exhaustion. And these blood cells clog together and anywhere where the blood flows in the veins, and that's called a crisis. That's really painful. It can be really debilitating as well when I do have these crises. So I go from being able to speak like this, have conversations like this, walk around, to being completely debilitated and incapacitated while having a crisis. And that in itself is quite a mental jar. And I think one of the main experiences I can recall and share with you guys today is that in 2012, I had like one of my worst crises ever. The treatment that I had in hospital was terrible. And from that point in time, I kind of made a decision to never go into hospital again, which is ridiculous because I have a chronic condition like sickle cell that affects me day to day. So that was an unrealistic target, but I went 6 years without having to go into hospital, at a detriment to myself, because I did experience crises, but I tended to manage them at home. So when I did go back into hospital in 2018, it felt like I had lost, like severely lost, because I'd been counting down for the last 6 years in that period that, oh, I haven't been to hospital with a crisis. I haven't been to hospital with a crisis. And so when I did have that happen, it felt like a significant loss. And I remember wanting to give up, all the kind of things that you think about depression. It was like I felt guilty for existing. I just felt such a burden to my family and friends, because it's like, oh, I'm sick again. I can't do life again. Why is sickle cell affecting me like this? And I kind of didn't really notice the signs until the following year, where I spoke to a therapist and we were discussing the episode, and it was like, yeah, no, those were signs and symptoms of having some sort of depressive episode. And so since then, I've been really like talking about it and sharing my experiences. And I realized that for me, it's my chronic condition that kind of exacerbates those kind of feelings of anxiety or feeling a little bit depressed. However, for men in general, there are loads of things that go unsaid that happen to them. And I think that's why it's so important to have these discussions here so that we can like break down the stigma, the stereotypes, and things like that. Um, Emmanuel, I don't know if you know any other kind of causes because I'm speaking from personal experience, and for me, it's definitely like sickle cell that's kind of affected me in that way.
Yeah, no, yeah, appreciate you opening up and sharing your experiences. Um, yeah, I mean, stress is a huge one, um, and what I know, you know, everyone has different sort of stress capacity, like, um, it's one of the main triggers, you know, for depression and um, also alcohol and drug abuse is also one of the is from what I understand. I haven't had that experience, but I have had a friend who has sort of gone down a road where, you know, drugs has led to thoughts and paranoia. So yeah, drugs can be a contributor as well, is my understanding.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like, what was that situation like? Did your friend open up to you about having these issues? Because I think one of the stigmas is that men don't really talk about mental health. So like, how did your friend open up to you? Was it kind of just you noticed the signs or something like that?
Yeah, so I have maybe two friends, and I must say most. I'm saying this is there's probably a lot more who are probably going through, maybe going through who won't speak, and you know, we have quite open conversations and what's going through. You know, people saying if you're going through things, you know, speak up. We're here to speak. You know, we're here to listen. And you know, it's quite deep down inside. I do know that, you know, there are quite a few of my friends who just probably won't. It's just not part of their nature to do such a thing. So yeah, I was quite obviously taken back when my friend did approach that, and when he did, I realized there were sort of telltale signs, I guess, in the past, but I didn't kind of put two and two together. I felt a little bit bad about it, to be honest. But to be fair, he was really good. He reached out, and I didn't realize he was going through an episode at the time, but he was kind of explaining a story which didn't really make much sense. It was all over. Me and a friend just went around. We didn't do like an intervention or anything like that. We just wanted to be present and kind of leave it in his own time to kind of open up. You know, we normally like to have a drink and stuff when we meet up, but and we just sat down, we chilled. When he was ready, he kind of went into things naturally, and then yeah, we just didn't act as a specialist, not a specialist. It was just more so about him and being in there, someone he can speak to openly and feel like I'm safe, and then, you know, offering some advice in terms of places he could go to help, and you know, go. There's lots of really good charities out there that can offer some really good specialist support. So that was my personal experience.
Mm. No, that makes sense. And I think I've had similar situations where I would have a discussion with a friend and realize that, oh, maybe you should think about counseling, something like that. But they tend to, especially men, they tend to be like, oh no, I'm good, like I'll be fine. Kind of dismiss the kind of notion of it. But it's always sad when it gets to the point where, you know, that there's an episode that's happening or something that's occurring, and then it's at that point it's taken seriously. Whereas like I think prevention is always better than, you know, when it's happening, like it's not a cure. Um, so I think there's definitely a stigma among men. Definitely in the title we have this talk called Man Up, and I think that's something that men tend to take to heart, like, oh no, you have to just man up and forget these experiences and just, you know, go about it. It happens and you have to be strong. Um, and I think that does kind of play an impact on how it affects men as well, because I mean, I'm not going to speak for women, but in terms of men, it's like I have to be strong. I have to be able to do X, Y, Z. I should be a provider. I should be all of these things. And I think it just makes it difficult to be open and honest about when you've had sad moments or when you're not feeling okay. And, you know, it never feels like it's okay to not be okay, because you're supposed to be a man. You're supposed to be able to do all these things. And do you think that kind of notion does affect how open men are with speaking about these issues?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think when it comes to the feeling of you know, like you said, people relying on you, around you, and it's normal to be that feeling of you don't want to burden others with your, you know, with what you're going through, because you know, at any given moment, most people are going through something. So it's almost that feeling of, you know, not wanting to sort of burden other people, you know, what you're going through as well at that particular moment of time. I think with Black men in particular, this is just from my sort of personal experience, growing up in London. A lot of young Black men maybe have gone through a lot of experiences at younger ages, and which has never really been addressed. It just kind of carried on. So, and that sort of comes out maybe later on in life, and it can maybe come out in different ways. You know, from when you're going through things to you know, almost outbursts, you know, in moments. So that's definitely something that I see more amongst you know, my Black sort of friends and brothers and cousins. So yeah, that's I would agree that's yeah, something that men sort of hold on to and don't want to talk much about. I would say it's kind of maybe a little bit of a controversial opinion, but I also would say I've heard a lot of times for maybe women need to speak out more, and a lot of men do want to speak up and they don't. And then I think you also get a lot of men who actually don't want to speak up. It's just they couldn't think of anything worse than wants to speak up. I would rather go through a year of feeling really rubbish, maybe for life or whatever, than anything. And that's the tricky bit, is how do you help those people like that? Be maybe closer towards that. So I'm kind of speaking out loud, I guess, thinking out loud. And for myself, if I'm going through something, maybe more about just physically being present, I guess, rather than just kind of approaching me and kind of asking me something. I would get extremely defensive. I'm a very stubborn person. So it's maybe more about being physically present and at the right time when I feel to say something, then kind of so I think it's important to mention that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I think Emmanuel, you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if it's just me. When your sound quality was just a bit in and out. I did hear your main points there, and I think I agree that, like, when you have a certain upbringing as well, it's difficult to change that and to become someone that shares things. And I think for me personally, again, going back to my own personal experience with sickle cell, I think it's definitely something that I have walked the path alone for quite some time, in terms of what I'm actually thinking mentally. And like on the outside, I kind of have to pretend that I'm okay just because society really. Like when I think about when I was going through my first job applications and things like that, and I got a crisis during my first job, it was like I still forced myself to go to work because, you know, I'm already at a disadvantage being Black, and then present something like sickle cell, it's then, oh, already they're gonna add that on the, we don't like this guy, or we have something against this guy. So in my head, it's like I always had to present myself in the best possible light, in the best possible way. But then that's counterproductive because internally I'm not okay. And I think that's exactly the same for like mental health conditions or mental health problems, where it's like oh, I have to be okay because this person is relying on me, or I need to show that I'm okay because I don't want anyone to worry about me, that kind of thing. And it's just really important to emphasize that, no, speak up, find someone that at least you can be confident in to be able to share that experience. And then I think it grows from that, especially like in my journey as well, and sharing about sickle cell. It started with just a few people, just a few friends, and now I'm here online telling everyone about my mental health problems. So yeah, I think it's something to be talked about more often. And I don't know if anyone at this point wants to add any experiences that they've had, which would be good to add to the conversation. If not, with me and Emmanuel continue talking. But just wanted to remind people that this is an open discussion, and we're happy to have hands up and contributions. Thank you, Denny, for agreeing with me. I see that. I appreciate that. Was there anything in particular that you agreed with that you wanted to add to the conversation?
Yeah, Dunstan, I wanted to go back to what you said about taking one step at a time. I think that's important to kind of just be realistic with yourself, with where you are. But you remember you sort of you was talking about that prevention and triggers and things. And you sound like you have a really good understanding of that. How did you get to the point where you understood like stress was, in itself? Yeah.
No, that's a good question. I guess, as weird as it is to say, kind of like life experience. Like I think that's what's so hard about sickle cell, is that because it's something that affects me every day, each day is a different lesson. And so I'd noticed that there were certain situations that would cause these crises. So it would be like stress. Like stress is every day. Everyone's stressed about something, cost of living, government, all of that stuff. But stress that actually I feel on my body, where it's like I've done too much, whether it's in the gym or something like that, and it's like, oh no, I can feel my body's reacting, and then by that time, once it started, it's too late. So it's kind of like adopting healthier practices to try and manage these kind of triggers. So like stress is one for me, exhaustion is another. But as you can imagine, there's always going to be a point where you're stressed. There's always going to be a point where you're exhausted. So it's hoping that you've done the right things before it gets to that breaking point to be able to like manage and balance it. And I think that's the same with like mental health. Like it doesn't need to get to the point where it's the breakdown, it's paranoia, it's anxiety, it's depression. It's like, try and spot the signs or do wellness checks with yourself. I realize that I do a lot of things automatically, so I'm always kind of like thinking about how my body feels, just because I'm trying to avoid that crisis. And so mentally, there's probably like 1,000 different calculations that happen in my head that just happen naturally, so I don't really communicate that well, in terms of how to avoid certain things, because it's kind of now it's become like a learned behavior. So I think, yeah, just, I don't want to say trial and error for everyone else, because trial and error could be really fatal. But just checking in with yourself, like, are you okay today? Like, how do you feel? What's happening in my mind? Is this normal? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So you're sort of able to ask yourself those questions and see things as it's happening. I guess one thing that I've realized about myself, but sort of on a personal level, is looking at it from a well-being perspective, is I kind of know when I'm moving away from being at what I call my best, whatever that means. But things like exercise, if I'm not like religiously going to the gym, but I know that when I am going to the gym on a more regular basis, I generally feel better. People talk about endorphins and everything, but there's loads lot of things to feel good about, and eating well. I don't know, everyone a good meal, but I know if I'm eating well, that generally helps me to feel good about myself. When those things start to sort of stack, things like sleep as well, if I'm going consecutive days, working long hours or not getting enough sleep, all of that can add up, and kind of really real with yourself, and kind of understanding at what certain point that you can't continue like that, or things can really, really spiral. So yeah, I think it's important to understand things to keep, things at bay. Can everyone hear me? Because I've had a couple of comments in the chat.
It's like in and out. Like I get what you're saying, but then it's like a cut. I don't know why that is. But I was gonna say that those points that you made about like checking in on yourself and well-being, I agree. I think those are really good points. I guess one of the things that I've always struggled with is like spotting it for other people, in terms of like when they're not okay, and like trying to be there, like you said, be present for them, be there for them, because I think I have a grasp of what is not okay for me, but for other people, it's always hard to figure that out. And like I know I've got a couple of friends who, when things aren't going too well, they kind of bury their head in work or like other things to distract, and don't really deal with that issue until it has to be dealt with. And I definitely know that's not the healthiest way to do it, but I kind of, all I can do is say, oh, I'm here if you want to have that talk or discuss anything. And I think that's kind of something that I don't know if you've got an answer to. I'm just kind of bring it up, like it's hard to know when to be there for someone or how to be there for someone else that's going through it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's something that you're saying, I don't know if I have the answer to that. I think that's half of it, is you don't have the answers to a lot of it. And sometimes naturally, you kind of always look for solutions. I don't know about you, but a lot of times when people are speaking, you may already be thinking about what you're next, or how you could potentially help them with that problem or solve that problem. And a lot of the times in this case, that's not what is needed. It's literally just literally be present, and that's something I've recently sort of started to learn a lot. It's always kind of coming back with answers and trying to solve things, and it's just literally so yeah, that's something in itself quite a big thing, because it doesn't come to me to do that. So yeah, no, that's important. I think we've got a question in the chat from Laurel.
So it's, I worry about my carer not opening up about how he feels dealing with being my carer, and how he feels watching me go through challenges with sickle cell disease. I tried to get him to open up, but he will not. Any suggestions? Oh, that's a really good question. It's a good question because for me, like, I'm the one that struggles with opening up about how I feel with sickle cell. So I can only imagine what it's like the other way around, when the person that sees you going through it and can't actually, be in your body and feel what's happening, but they see what's happening on the outside. That must be so like devastating in a way, because they can't help you how they want. It's kind of like do you have your medication? And they can't take the pain away. And I think that would take its toll on anyone. So I have a feeling that the carer does have things that they do want to discuss, but perhaps they feel like it's also a difficult conversation to have with the person that's going through it. And one of the things that I have realized is that sometimes it's about timing. So like, I don't want to sound rude, but like, if I'm going through a crisis, I can't have the conversation about what I need, or I can't have the conversation about what I need or what's happening or what will make that other person feel better because I'm solely focused on myself in that moment. But then after a crisis, once I've recovered, I think it's like a check-in point where it's like, how did you feel? Or how did that, and it's hard because again, just asking questions doesn't always mean that they'll be open. But I think making them aware that it's difficult and it's hard, but like now that I'm better, let's have a conversation about it and what can we do? Or maybe I can write some things down that would really help and make it easier for you, that kind of thing. But it's definitely something that I've been thinking of recently, how to like manage community conversations between person with sickle cell and the caregiver, because it's not easy at all. I don't know if I answered that question at all, but I tried.
It's an important question, isn't it? A lot of times there is maybe there isn't enough focus on like you said, the caregivers. So it's an important question. Thanks for the question, Around. I have another question from Nola. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Good evening, guys. How do I get an 18-year-old to take his medication religiously?
I assume the person has sickle cell. I'm not 100% sure, but it's hard because even I won't lie, it's hard to take medication religiously from my personal experience. But what I would say is that you kind of have to like build it into said person's routine. So like when I wake up, I know I have to take a bunch of vitamins and stuff. And it just, I think I can't remember how many days it takes to build a routine. But if you continue to kind of do it, it kind of becomes natural. Also think about how the form of the medication. So tablets are hard for some people to take. So sometimes maybe crushing it or making it soluble and things like that. Like, yeah, you kind of have to get creative in a way with that. And again, it's everyone is different. So I wouldn't say that is a way to do it, but I think, yeah, building it into the routine and like making it interesting somehow. So yeah, changing the module of taking it or explaining the importance of it if they don't understand that too. Those might be ways to deal with it. I know, Emmanuel, you said you're a father in the evenings. I don't know if you have tips for like sort of getting kids to do or young adults to do things they don't really want to.
That's a tough one. I think that was really good suggestion. I think 18 years of age, massive change, still going through big, massive change, becoming, turning from a boy to a man, maybe finishing age or maybe starting work. There's lots of external factors that might be contributing towards, a flow of thinking. So I think it's important to consider the situation, the circumstances that particular individual is going through. I guess any age in the whole of your life, 18 is probably one of the most challenging times for most people. Amount of change. So yeah, habits is always a good one, but I guess that can be maybe challenging for 18-year-olds. But like putting what I do with, I don't know, my son's only 2 years of age, so it doesn't really relate as much. But more to remind myself to give my son is to kind of put things in certain places that I know I can't miss it, and when I walk past,
Oh, your volume's gone again. Right at the end, your sound just went for some reason.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just saying, kind of physically putting things in places that will almost remind you can't forget. If that is the reason why, I'm not saying that. I'm not sure what the reason is. If one of the reasons is because of forgetting and having things in place when you can't miss, potentially help. But yeah, maybe yeah, I really good advice to answer as well.
Do you think it's easy to accept therapy as an option for men? Like if I said to you, I don't know, you're displaying a certain behavior that I know is abnormal for you, and I said, I think you should consider therapy. Like how first of all, what would be your first reaction to that? And then we're just dramatizing it out. You don't have to be too serious about it. But like how, yeah,
Yeah,
what would you?
I think I've touched on before that, and hopefully everyone can hear me, that I can be quite stubborn, and I'm told sometimes I can be quite defensive. So you know, it would probably raise a lot of questions in my head, like, what, you know, why do you think I need, you know, therapy? What is therapy? You know, where do you even, you know, where do you start? When did you think that? You know, all these kind of questions that were kind of raised in my head. So I'll probably need a few minutes or a day or so to process it. So, but no, I'm guessing if, you know, when that sort of question is asked, it's maybe got to a point where you know, has been signed and can talk candidly about what the situation is. So I do believe in being honest. If you kind of see a situation, or you see a change in behavior that you notice, which is becoming, which is going to a really, really negative place, then I believe there are times, like you said, it's about timing, it's about how and where you approach it, and about what you're seeing, and you know, express that. It kind of goes back to what we were saying before about listening and try not to offer solutions. But I guess if I was to offer solutions, more about asking it as a question, like, have you ever, like you said, like you asked me, have you ever, you know, thought about therapy, or maybe giving an example, you know, someone that's been in a similar situation, or even getting the actual therapist who maybe help, you know, seeing their face. And I think personally for me, I haven't been to therapy before, but I would imagine I'll probably be more comfortable maybe speaking to someone who's, you know, similar to me, or maybe looks like, you know, my mentors, my parents, my uncles, my mums, my cousins, whatever. I think that will make it a lot more comfortable. Yeah, maybe sort of suggesting people that are used to speaking to people of African or Caribbean sort of background, from a that sort of background. So yeah, that's just speaking from a personal perspective rather than for everyone else. What about yourself? Have you ever been asked before that, you know, have you seen a therapist yourself, or been asked to see a therapist?
Yeah. So when I was first asked, I did take offense. I was like, "What do you mean? Like, well, I'm fine. I'm good." But then I think there were like telltale signs for me where it became apparent that no, this is probably a good course of action. And then in doing it the first time around, I was skeptical, because I was like, I don't know what the outcome is. I didn't really feel any positive benefit of doing it. But then it's because I wasn't open to it in my mind. So in doing it other times, I find it so useful. And I think it's allowed me to, because in a way it's more of a talking therapy that I haven't done. I don't know what the other kind of options of therapy there are, but I've done more of a talking kind of therapy where it's like I kind of have to come to my own conclusions, but I'm steered in that direction. And I think from there I've been able to like accept that yes, I have sickle cell. That was something I didn't accept before. I was like, I used to think, no, it's not part of me. I don't want to talk about it, this, that, and the other. But now it's like I'm at work and it's the first thing that I had to do like a little bio, and I wrote about, I write about sickle cell and stuff like that. So like everyone at work knows, whereas before I didn't even disclaim it or anything like that. But that's kind of like what therapy showed me in terms of like accepting the parts of me that I wasn't accepting. So it's definitely been really beneficial, and I definitely recommend. And I think one of the things I would always say is that it doesn't have to be bad to do it. I think and obviously we're in a cost of living crisis and things can be expensive, but there are free free therapies and things like that for people to sign up to and do. And you're right, when the therapist does look like you or has similar experiences or can relate, it makes such a difference. Like it's actually, yeah, like my most recent therapist, he was black, male, and like we'd gone through similar experiences, so he could relate to what I was saying, as opposed to if it was someone that didn't look like me and kind of has to like, they say they understand, but I mean, do you really like, do you really understand? So it's kind of one of those things when it is someone that looks like you and you have those conversations, it's really easy to be open and honest about what you're going through. So yeah, that was a good point. But I'd recommend anyone anyone to, whether it's you're just a little bit stressed or anything like that, you defo should. Um, but yeah, is
Anyone
there
else here had experiences with therapy, or maybe want to share, how maybe they've got to, to support the therapist. No, that was that's helpful in terms of what you said about that, and your personal experiences there as well. Something I just quickly wanted to touch on too was, I guess we spoke about it very briefly earlier about being the kind of provider, I guess, and things like that, and kind of how society at men, and I think there's a lot of conversation about how society looks at women, with how sort of being portrayed on women, and I think we talk a lot about some of the pressures that are put on men in terms of being the provider. And you hear me okay?
you cut just again, but I can hear you now perfectly.
Okay.
It's weird. I don't know what's happening.
It's just saying in terms of being a provider and earning, and if people are going through sort of financial difficulties, like it's living crisis right now, and a lot of people are in debt, and that could be a huge cause for a huge trigger, and a lot of men may feel embarrassed about speaking about it, not feeling valued, and I think it's just important to mention that no more than providers or earners, and do have emotions. You do have things that make you feel good and not feel good, away from just making money. And I believe that can be a massive trigger to people. I think even just having that conversation around money, one of the things that maybe we need to do a little bit more, and kind of be open and not judge, and help and listen, and make people, our friends, our family, our cousins, whoever it is, just feel comfortable for being themselves, away from their career, away from what they do for a living, or how to earn, or what they've bought themselves or their family, or what holiday they've gone on. About enjoying them as a person, away from money.
No, those are some good points. Like, yeah, I completely agree, especially in these times now where there's so much pressure on those. If we think of stereotypical stereotypes where it's like you have to provide, oh, but there's a cost of living crisis. There's, the pandemic that just happened. Everyone is affected by that. So to be the sole person to deal with that, it's just not feasible. And so like you do have to realize that it's not all on your shoulders, and there are certain things that you just can't always carry by yourself. So I agree in like sharing and communicating and talking about those experiences, because also even in life, like just general, like if you don't know something and you continue to not know that something, is going to eat away at you, because like I don't know. But if you just ask the question, like, oh, what is 2 + 2? And then someone tells you 4, it's like, oh, okay. And then that stress is gone. So it's kind of like as simple as just talking to each other about issues that you're going through and brainstorming, because that's how you kind of able to find solutions. Or maybe you won't find a solution and it's just I needed to just say something.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then, okay, now I feel better.
So how kind are you to yourself?
Oh, I'm getting better. I'm getting better. I wasn't very, that was, wow, okay. Are you my therapist? I'm joking. So like, yeah, I'm getting better at being kinder to myself. I think, yeah, like even if we go back to what Dele was saying about is it my fault that I have a crisis? Is it this? Is it like all of those things used to weigh in my head a lot, like, oh my gosh, like now I'm sick and this, that, and the other. Um, and then I felt bad, and then I felt guilty because I'm dragging everyone into it. But yeah, no, I've kind of had to be like, you know what, everyone gets sick sometimes, everyone needs a day, everyone needs some time to recover. It's just when I get sick, it's just a bit different. Like, but you know, it happens to everyone, and I just need to embrace it a little bit. Like a short story, I was on holiday with my friends and I ended up in a crisis. And I felt bad because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm ruining everyone's holiday. But I wasn't, that wasn't the reality. Everyone just kind of checked up on me and then went about their business. And I was like really appreciative of that because I was like, please, no one, no one, let me not ruin anyone's holiday because of, crisis. But then if it was a me when I was like a few years ago, I'd been like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst person ever. Like, why did I do this? So yeah, I'm learning to be kind, in short, kinder to myself.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Same, likewise. I think it's one of those sometimes it's almost easier to be kind to other people, and actually when you sort of listen to your own voice in your head, you realize that sometimes you're not as kind to yourself as you maybe are to other people. So I think that's really, really important. Someone's mentioned that you forgot to mention that you're now a mentor at Sickle Cell Society as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. So I think that's also in reply to someone, the 18-year-old that's struggling with medication. Like maybe you could forward that person to the sickle cell mentoring situation, and I can try and encourage them to take their medication. I can't promise that. I'm not a miracle worker. It's hard. Thanks, Adassa.
One thing I've only been a volunteer with the society for probably about 18 months now. But one thing I've definitely taken away is serving. I couldn't ever imagine the amount of reward to get from like serving and trying to do something good beyond kind of something, trying to get something in return for it. So that's something I've definitely learned. Serving is definitely a way to kind of help with your well-being, whether that's at church or mosque, a charity, or whatever it is. But I definitely personally found that's a kind of way of keeping well-being in place. I know it sounds selfish, but it was like a surprisingly kind of side effect. Sort of volunteering.
That's great. That's great. And also, like I'm sure giving blood, like I don't know if there's no, don't quote me on this, but I'm sure giving blood and like signing up to donate to give blood is also really good for the well-being. So if anyone wants to do that, links.
I've got to the point where it's like I just see it as a duty now. So it's something I've already told myself. I'm in it for life. So just a duty now. And one of the things that I guess I don't even really feel good about. I just see it as just something we've got to do. It's just something everybody or most of us kind of have the capability of doing. It doesn't cost us anything. An hour of your time, you can save up to 3 lives, and potentially your blood going to someone with sickle cell disease, or even outside of that. There's a lot of inequalities in the NHS, and you know, this is one way we can help to address that, you know, ourselves. So yeah, it's definitely they've seen the link. Olivia's just posted the link into the chat. So if anybody hasn't given blood before, yeah, would recommend.
Amazing. I think at this point we can. I don't know if anyone's got any lasting comments or questions that they'd like to ask at this point. But I really appreciate everyone that has attended today. And yeah, if there isn't anything else, Olivia, I'll pass it back to you.